Okay, so I think good evening for everyone. Thank you for joining the call here, and I'm honored to be here to talk with you about my research, actually about designing dynamic digital twins for the resilient, equitable cities. And so I will talk about a couple research projects that we have here, and primarily, I think highlighting some of the I think latest I think development and in my group and maybe in the United States, and also the some challenges really we found on the way of doing this type of research here. So let me get started with my my team. So yeah, for someone if not presenting, if I'd be appreciate if you mute your mic because it's the background noise. Okay, so I lead a lab at Rutgers called Urban Informatics Lab. So this shows you the current team members. So I'm currently supervising 2 postdocs and a bunch of PhD students. So most of the students are working on the research scene of quantifying and modeling the built environment, and for the coastal resiliency and other type of social crisis, which will be a talk a bit when the presentation goes on. So generally in the lab, we rely on a state-of-the-art lot of remote sensing instruments, including visualization facilities, to doing really, I think, spatial mapping, and analysis, modeling, and visualization type of research. And we do a lot of work in the domain of AI-driven analysis and looking at really the overall goal is modeling and decision support for a variety of problems. So I still hear the noise. If someone can be mute himself, that'd be great because just for the benefit of the audiences.
主持人可以把这个背景音全部静一下吗？所有的人。
好的，老师，稍等。
主持人就把它关掉，全部关掉。
Someone probably cannot hear. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I don't have a really an outline here, but it starts a journey. Today's journey is here. So my story actually starts here. So this is a picture, and it embodies a lot of problems we try to resolve here. It's not really anything related to digital twin yet, but if you look at this picture, it's basically a common scene you can see during a natural disaster, right? During like a hurricane and tornado, and in China they call typhoon, right? So when you go out in the field after a major disaster, and you often wonder, so what happened here? The 2 buildings, right? They built in the close next to each other, and they built about the same time, but they failed very differently during this particular hurricane event. It's actually Hurricane Harvey in the South Texas area. So you ask yourself, what happened there? And is just pure bad luck, one of the buildings, or can science explain what happened here? Why? The structure very similar, very similar, and they experience same type of probably the forces, wind, whatever we can call it, right? Wind, storm, and water, flooding, but they come out very different results here. So this embodies many problems actually in the hurricane research or hazard research here, predicting what's going to happen at the fine grain level here to individual buildings. And this is a problem of challenging for many actually like similar groups in the United States here. So this phenomenon leads to one of term we often use here called catastrophe modeling here. So basically how the buildings and society and infrastructure behave under hazards, right? So I can show you, for example, here there could be single hazard, wind, or from flooding, or could be multiple hazard here. And the current what has been used over here in the United States, at the bottom over here, right? If you look at the flooding, this shows you a commonly used by the government here about depth to damage curve here. So on the horizontal axis shows you the depths of flooding above the first floor of your building, and the vertical axis is the percent of damages. Okay, so the blue box is actually what being used by Army Corps, by major programs like Jesus, which are used by the communities and researchers to estimating the damages. Okay, then the red one is what actually happened in the field. What actually happened, and you see the wide discrepancy here. Okay, so this is a problem. The problem because it's not trivial, and since we're gonna use this one to make decisions, right? Make billions-dollar decisions right here. So the problem here is we need a better these damage models. This damage model needs a better prediction of the wind and flooding over there, and also needs a better data about the built environment. Basically, we call the spatial structure of the buildings. So we also made a lot of progress on the domain of the prediction of the hazard, wind speed, and flooding depths, all these things. Then remain the big problem here in the United States is about spatial structure of the buildings. There's just not a lot of building data out there to describe these buildings in a way that can improve these predictions. So this is a problem, like I said, is not a trivial problem, and this chart probably shows you why it's very important here, right? So on the left side, it's about shows you the number of billion-dollar tropical cyclones and floods. And if I see each year we get about 3 or 4 of them, and each one of them costs because these are billion-dollar damages. And you will see that the tremendous amount of damage, the cost of that's hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And including also the human life losses here. And this is not a problem, it's like only for the United States. On the right side, it shows you the number of like some major floods in the entire world here. Okay? You will see this number is a big number here, right? So for a simple building here, and for this damage functions over there, for each of the building, eventually when you try to find a way to mitigating the hazards over there, right, this damage costs over there, you will need to make decisions. Okay, but we don't have a very good handling on the catastrophe modeling for the I think building assets, for the infrastructures over there, and to say the least. Okay. So this is because this rising cost, I mean rising number of the cost of natural disasters, and this is the headlines I grabbed from some of the websites here, very recent articles. Okay, and if I see for major parts of the United States, the insurance companies are pulling out. Florida's, California's, and they just don't insurance any kind of properties in that area for natural disasters. I mean, in particular for flooding and also other types of them, right? And in many places, the insurance premium surges, and this actually creates a tremendous problem here because if you cannot have insurance, many of the people cannot rebuild, right? And this insurance market is global. It's not only here pulling on United States over there. So the Asia would be, I mean, China or Singapore going to be isolated from it, because most of these insurance here are reinsured by the companies. Could it be in like Shanghai? The company could be in Singapore. So they buy the insurance, for other insurance companies. So because the risk at global is global basically, and the way the insurance works over there is they shift the risk to the other areas over there. But because these problems over there, you are no longer to see this risk can be shared globally and leads to problem of the sustainable development on many scales. So in witnessing these challenges here, we're starting one of actually about 10 universities that along East Coast. We started a project called Metropolitan Coastal Transformation Hub, funded by National Science Foundation. It's a 5-year project. Try understanding the governance of this hazards development coastal process all together. So it's a very big chart, but it shows you the complexity of this hazard domain here. First of all, we have hazards, right? We have a top actually research working on from Princeton and many other universities working on hazards, projecting the sea level rise, all these things. Then actually is the cluster of exposure and vulnerabilities. Basically, given the hazards on the built environment, how that going to translate in its exposure and vulnerability, and how that informs people decisions at household level, city level, and at the market level. Right? Then how this going to factor into decision, people make decisions to mitigating the risks over there, and how this also going to have to consider the ethics, equities, okay, and eventually altogether it becomes integrated risk management. So so far I haven't talked about any kind of digital twin, but this chart shows you if you want to build a digital twin to working on, let's say, the coastal resiliency issues over there, it needs to capture these elements. Okay, it has elements of natural systems of the hazards part over there. It has the components look at the built environment structures, right? And it has to have the economics layer of it. Right? It has to have the human part in that, how to make decisions. It has to reflect the equity part of it, how we can value people with really at vulnerable positions, people with low income, people with other type of challenges, right? And how you can make decisions to supporting that. So that's I think really it speak to what you need to be in the digital twin environment. So in spite of this, we start looking at New Jersey as a city scale digital twin. So we look into how we can build a digital twin for the entire state. And a state has been embattled and facing challenges of sea level rise, flooding, air quality, climate change, all the major these other natural disaster events here. So we sort of I think draw out in terms of different elements here, what we can build. And this shows you some framework over here. Basically, we have to look at this digital twin to supporting not only model the built environment as a copy of it, right? As we can do simulation on top of it, but it also serves as a gate for universities to experiment on that and looking at how to use it for the government to make decisions, modeling over there, and more importantly, and how we can make it be useful for actual people actually living in the area to use it to make risks, understanding the risks over there, and participating in the process right here. So that's it's not a traditional digital twin, and it's but captures some essence we want to do it. So based on that, we started looking to we cannot do it all together, right? It's a super large scope. So we look into a way of maybe we can look at a flood resilience digital twin here. Okay, so this shows you some of the things I'm going to focus on in the next couple of minutes here. So to us, so this is a decision problem here. Okay, so you have first of all, we have to improve the spatial structure of the built environment here. How we can model the entire cities areas like in New Jersey, right? Then we have how do we model the hazards, basically the flooding events. Then we also needed to looking at the decisions, which can be simply how do you respond for disaster, how to regulate the buildings. And in the United States, one of the terms they call it BFE, base flood elevation. So that's a red line here. It's a regulatory decision by individual municipality, individual cities over there. That's always saying we want our city, every building properties going to have at least elevation beyond I mean, the first floor elevation, but beyond this base floor elevation here. And then they're often doing projects based on that, and to elevating the homes across the entire region, spend hundreds of millions of dollars over there. Okay, so we can look at this, how things look at how we use the decision making here. Okay, so first thing we started doing is we started digitizing entire cities. We look at the New Jersey's. Sorry, because it's still okay. If the host can, I think mute some of the.
Yeah, there's too much noise.
Yeah, I just.
主持人老师，你能不能帮忙把那位静一下音啊？现在噪声太大了。
Okay, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. So we started doing the mapping. So we actually do a lot of mapping work. So we started mapping entire New Jersey, and we actually have a mobile mapping system, which is a high resolution 3D LiDAR mapping system. And this shows you actually some work we're doing in the Cape May, which is a coastal county, and you will see not far away, that's the coast, the ocean lies over there. That's a typical New Jersey coastal county what it looks like. Just thousands of building stocks, and at almost 3 or 4 feet above the sea level. And you can see how vulnerable they are, right? So what come out of this process here is we call point cloud data, right? So we digitize the entire point cloud, thousands, 10,000 miles. We already mapped around probably 30,000 kilometers. Right, so in the coast, we digitize entire state and bring this data set back to the lab. And one of the things we actually doing is actually make sense of this data. So these are some of the building attributes, and as part of interest, because those data attributes goes into the Jesus, which is catastrophe modeling software to look at estimating the damages. So those are the elements we need to extract from these hundreds of terabytes of data sets here. Okay. So we look into AI-based method, and some of things have been published, and some of them in the process here we is to looking at some of the computer vision models to extract the building attributes, particularly the elevation data, right? Elevation data like the first floor elevations. Okay. And we actually can achieve very accuracy across larger regions. So those are the data actually typically the agency does not have here, and which creates problem for estimating the damages. Those shows you some of our work in terms of we built interfaces algorithm together, which is looking at the human in the loop building data extraction, which allows basically AI does the work. Then the actual user actually can approve AI's results or reject it, or the different kind of fashion. And more recently, we actually just finished development segmentation engine we call segment any point cloud, which is a generic point cloud segmentation tool which allows to segment any point cloud data set in the web browser, leveraging foundational computer vision models. So you can segment any class from the point cloud as long as you define it. So these are just getting recently into action here. So allows us to extract all kinds of building attributes. Beyond that, we also can extract all the city features, stairs, sidewalks, roadways, anything in the point cloud. So that's why we call segment any point cloud engine. So these are some work we actually been working in over the couple of years to look at really to segment massive amount of point cloud data set to build the models, different kind of models for cities, so we can use damage assessment. Then another problem when we build this digital twin, we often found is the cross-modality data registration here. That means the data captured by different platforms, but you want to align them. So this often emerges in the context of the understanding historical event. So often, and I think you can find out these images of flooding for a particular area on the internet, or some even early from the archives of the 1970s, and recent pictures from that. So our job here is to understanding the extent of flooding here, based on registering this data with the 3D data set we collected there. So we call it as a cross-modality data registration problem here. So if we can register this data from internet, from social media with our backbone 3D data, so we will be able to estimating the absolute height of this flood, which allows us to calibrating the flood models. So this shows you some work, and often this image comes in, don't have any kind of geospatial coordinates, does not have the location data, does not have GPS data, and it's a really a difficult process to search these where this photo been taken, right? So we need to localize these photos over there. In that regards over there, so we formulate an algorithm basically allows you to, given a photo, you can query where this photo been taken by leveraging Google Earth and or satellite imagery, allows doing a synthetic drone flying over to localize these photos based on some deep learning features over here. So the problem is giving you given any kind of flood images, like on right side, the top right side here, we needed to localize where this photo been taken because of there's no GPS information, because of some privacy issues of that this information is not actually being like stripped off. So this is a framework we developed, allows to localize any kind of photo you take within a community, localize where it's been taken. Now, based on if you localize the photo where it's been taken, the next step is doing the alignment, basically registering these photos against our back-end point cloud data set. Okay. And we be able to register these user-given photos on internet with background data sets over there, which basically we host, allows you to estimating the flood depths over here. Okay. In this way, given any kind of historical flood photos, we can reconstruct the flood scenarios with this reference flood depths over there, which allows us to build, I think, reconstruct the past event. So this technique has been used in a community, actually called Manville, which is significantly impacted by this Hurricane Ida, I think about 3 years ago, 2021. So we use this image, generate a lot of synthetic data, I mean, not synthetic, actually, ground truth data about the highest water elevations over there. Then we back calibrate the model, the flood model for the entire area. Okay. Then based on the flood elevation calibrated, and at the same time, like I mentioned before, we're doing a citywide scale of mapping. So we have the entire city digitized, that it allows us to understanding the questions like this here. So these actually, because each of the building in the city we have mapped and we have extracted the essential features used for flood damage estimating here. So we can ask questions like this here. So what is the current building situation in the city of Manville? If you look at these histograms, so basically that's the number of buildings, right? That's entire city of buildings lumped into histograms. And we can understanding interregulation wise, what is the status of the building stocks in the entire city. And you can asking, okay, there are actually 22% about 22% of buildings over that not compliance with the latest flood regulations, right? And if you raise that flood regulation, that we call BFE, to adding 3 feet to it, and then you will see nearly half of the building stocks over in the community needs to do some kind of work in order to be able to survive in the future, let's say, flood events here. So that becomes a powerful tool for the city, for the agencies like FEMA, the United States, over to make decisions how they can invest. This another one shows you in that particular events here, right, how many of homes actually receive the certain depths of water above in the buildings. Because of data we have, we survey the entire city. we extract all the information for the entire city building stocks over there, we can understand the extent damages, which never can be done in the past for the entire city. Then if we have the insurance data, which we get the FEMA for individual properties over there, so we can have a much better improved the curve. I think this one here, right? We can have ground truth damages with percentage damage with the depths of flooding, which is really the holy grail people want to get. They can use make decisions over there, right? So that allows us to looking at this at the city scale at a histogram level. Then this also we can look at questions like if we want to do some mitigation choice, if we have like $50 million, which in this case it is, so they have about $50 million from the US government. They want to improve the city's resiliency. And we look at the regulation, what they're going to do here. Are we going to require elevating the homes in the city by 2 feet, by 1 feet? But if we do that, if the events come again, how many buildings are going to still get hit, get damaged, right? So you guys clearly see when we raise the regulations by about 2 feet, and you will see the huge drop of benefit from 77 to 21 homes. So that main scale may be the best elevation, the best trade-off here. Maybe look at a BFE plus 2 here, base flood elevation plus 2 feet. That's a decision carries millions of dollars of choice here, right? Now, so we can reach a maximum benefit here without going in order to get these 21 buildings also free from damage over that. I spend a lot of money on it, like investment on it. Okay. So, but this also open the question of ethical, right? Ethics over there. Is it ethical to leave these buildings out? And then we can look at it spatially, how these basically building cluster together different vulnerabilities, and we look at a combination of risk reduction strategies. We're gonna doing some kind of things like we either elevating homes or we look at buyout. Basically, we completely buy the buildings out. We pay the homeowners. So we government buy your building, you move out, you build at different places. So these are basically becomes a basic decisions over there, looking at how we can make these things happen. Okay. To the end of the day, so we put everything into a system called Inundation Risk Information System Viewer, which allows users actually to make at a city scale, look at the building stock conditions over there, look at the point cloud, and overlaying a variety of different sort of scenarios over there, understanding the challenges. So these are a sort of a digital twin to understanding the dynamic process of flooding extent and the decision choices and the column building stock informations. And it's not only there and the flood community, and it's not only elevating buildings, right? Sometimes roads are inundated, and you won't get the benefit of the service like firefighting and emergency service, the hospital, right? And so these actually, we also look at dynamically in this digital twin allows to analyze during when flood comes over here. So which part of a building gradually lose accessibility to hospitals, lose accessibility to the firefighting over there. So the curves right over there in the bottom shows you at the peak of this natural disaster over there. Most of the buildings actually cut off from the services. Right? So that's becomes a vulnerability. And this digital twin can be further extended into considering this evacuation, urban search, and rescue planning here. So in the bottom here, we consider the flood velocity, and then we put a human into the picture here. Basically, we model the humans of the motion process walking into the flood waters over there. So we understand during certain area at certain time, the evacuation would be not possible, right? Because of the hazard rating here. You will see as flood comes, the areas over there, it's impossible to do evacuation because people, if you want to doing the last minute evacuation here, and some areas they just cannot be evacuated. If you're doing last minute, the flood comes, then if you expect people can come in to save you, then the top one shows you the areas cannot be reached because not only because flooding, but also because of the close proximity to the power lines. and we extract every power line from the LiDAR data set. So we look at the I think the proximity, the feasibility rescue. So that putting together, you can use digital twin in this fashion to supporting evacuation, urban rescue, and urban search and rescue planning. So, and this turns out become critical, and the reason because these findings actually we send it to the state, to the federal government, we publish it, and the decisions are not one the people want to hear about it. They actually the state use our finding made a decision. You either in the area over there, you either move out, you all pay for yourself to elevating the buildings. So basically, they have granted about $50 million by President Joe Biden, and he's visiting the tour of the area. $50 million you can use to rebuild the city. And the decision eventually, our study points to, we cannot rebuild it. We have to relocate. Basically, the $50 million mostly can use to be buying the properties. The people can rebuild at different places. Okay, so those are not easy decisions, but the simulations, all this data come together will inform this is the most sustainable way, and this is the most safe way to do that. And of course, the people don't take it well, and we getting blasted by by medians, by people's scolding, by these decisions. Okay, so these leads to actually, you know, what we can do better in the ask people leave, rebuild different place over there, or but also the possibility we cannot evacuate and to save them during last minute. So this leads to really the most important elements we are working on now is early warning system. We should have early warning much early, 30, 40, you know, like a couple of days before that, so people can evacuate early. So that's why we have we build early warning systems over there. This shows you one of the platform we have built. It's basically a early warning system allows it integrates the building information model for so this example is for a transit station, for a train station into Manhattan, sitting on the Hudson River. It's about 3 feet above the sea level. So we built an entire model combining GIS and building information model from the entire city, and combining with on-demand actually not on-demand, regular simulation of the flooding every 6 hours. It simulates the events of 96 hours ahead, and actually the agency is using that to make decisions, doing evacuation, removing assets, blocking traffic, stop the train, and everything used based on decision making using this combining the hazards and the spatial structure of the buildings. And this shows you the we can use it to look at what's going to happen in the horizon of 96 hours. And it provides the warning on which area could be inundated, and it also gives you indicating of what action going to do to remove it. On the right side of in the table here shows you the actions to take, right? And Loda shows you the extent of flooding, and we do have the ground level. I think the visuals. Yeah, no times yes. So actually at ground level, street level, looking at the overlaps. Okay, you can look at the damages. So that leads to a bulk of our work now is look at using digital twins, looking at early warnings, decisions going to happen. This shows you the example of what happened, what forecast. I think about 96 hours, actually not 48 hours ago, what's going to happen over there. Okay. So this leads to my last piece of it, the presentation, a little bit over the time here. So these are, I know these hazards over there, but what's on the horizon in terms of latest trend here? So in here, and we look at some things as a coupling of it. So if you have a chance, you can go to this video. You can look at this called I think a stampede at New York Penn Station here. So this what happened here is the train breakdown in the tunnel, and a lot of people in the terminal in the train starting delayed, piling up, and there were actually one passenger getting really uncomfortable, starting like shouting, and the police come in and tasered him. Basically, it's like a electrical gun, tasered him. The sound is sound like an actual gun. The people started shouting, active shooter. The people started running away and get a lot of people injured over there. So these are leads to our observation basically in many of cities over there. These are compounding disasters basically. When a snowstorm happens, and this is going to be typically what you're going to see in Manhattan's, 10,000 people piling in one place, right? This is natural disaster impacts. But what it coupling with a simple taser gun, you can cause mass casualties. So these to basically look at using digital twin to look at compounding of natural disaster and the man-made events over here. So that's about, I think, a novel line of research in the homeland security and also in the NSF, look at compounding of man-made and natural disasters here. So that's about something, the most recent work we started working to is to look at multiple events. And we have digital twin for the natural hazard events. We also built the digital twin to simulating people in the major facilities over there. When we coupling them, so we can use to support major decisions over there. What's going to happen? How we evacuate? How we position the resources over there? So preventing things like this, a simple event of train breakdown can lead to mass stampede, and it could be much worse. If we have situation like this, then if we have stampede, this is we're gonna see the events like in Korea a few years ago. We're gonna see this kind of impacts over there. So I think really this is about all my presentation here.